Hello everybody. So I got an ambitious video for you today. A lot to talk about. I want to talk about trad health, traditional health being disrupted. And there's going to be the next big thing. And the next big thing, I think, is going to be the disruption of traditional health. And why do I say that? Okay, so I have investing themes for the next 10 years, right? And I have three big buckets that I think are on right now. And I don't think, for example, space and quantum are there yet. I think space exploration and the exploration of the quantum world, of quantum computing, I think this is still way too early. But I think there are three major themes that are real right now. One theme that I cover a lot on the channel is the theme of resource abundance. I'm gonna call it in that bucket, right? Resource abundance. That's things like artificial intelligence, embodied AI, right? That's your bots, AI, that's your self-driving. Energy, it's all linked. If you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of intelligence. If you have a lot of intelligence, you can find how to harness more energy. And in general, the zero marginal cost society. So resource abundance, I would argue, is the first major theme. The second theme is the new economic order or the new monetary order, the entrance from a world of inflation to a world of deflation. Everything is becoming more deflationary. That's the triumph of Austrian economics over inflationary economics, fiat economics, Keynesian economics. That's fiat dies. That's another theme. And of course, all of my Bitcoin plays and my Bitcoin proxies fits that theme. And I think we're left with one final theme, which has nothing to do with the two other. There's a little bit of a relationship, but the theme that I want to talk about is the healthcare revolution and the revolution of healthcare. And I would consider that theme the extension or the enhancement of healthy life. It's moving from sick care to curing disease and, eventually life extension and eventually life enhancements of all sorts. And of course, this is what a lot of companies that I'm going to cover in this video talk about today. So, and there's a few, very seminal books in this field, which I think are kind of a basis for this investment. Of course, the person who has always been the best at predicting the future, Ray Kurzweil, I suggest you look at his new book and his vision for healthcare. It's quite astonishing, quite outstanding. Any of a Diamandis book, Diamandis of course is huge on the health revolution. So are all over billionaires, right? They're all huge on this, spending a lot of money in the health world, and of course he's got many ventures in there, Peter Diamandis, and that book has a lot of very outstanding stake on healthcare. And of course, no discussion of the healthcare revolution wouldn't be complete without talking about lifespan, which is, to my surprise, as I made this video, still the number one best-selling book in genetics, in the field of genetics. That's still the number one selling book, and of course, if you follow this field, you will not be surprised by some of the takes, for example, on NMN, and some of the really amazing points that are made into this book, which I won't delve into for this video, but I think there's a lot of signs that we're moving into this revolution of healthcare, and it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot, traditional healthcare, and traditional healthcare is absolutely not ready for what is about to come. So let me just give you a few examples, and these guys don't miss. These guys, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, the Max 7, they're called Max 7 for a reason, right? There's a reason why they're all investing heavily in the healthcare revolution bucket. That reason is because they think disruption is going to happen and they need to move the needle. And you may remember 5 years ago now, Tim Cook mentioned that Apple's greatest contribution to mankind would be health. And of course they see a world where the doctor is your phone or the phone is your doctor. And Apple is casually, they've entered into I call it an industry deletion strategy, and think about how many industries were deleted with the iPhone, right? They even deleted some of their own products, like the iPod. The iPod was deleted by the iPhone. They deleted the entire printing industry. They deleted so many industries, and they're continuing on with deleting industries. And so, for example, let's talk about hearing aids a second. So you may remember a few months ago, Apple introduces the new AirPods Pro for $249, right? No, so not that expensive, and you have a clinical grade hearing aid, and the iPod Pro will do a hearing test and they will fix your hearing. And so of course this is from Costco. You still have Costco trying to sell these, and frankly they don't look that good if you ask me. This looks much more hip. If you go to the store and you have this, you're hip. If you go to the store and you have this, you're not hip. Anyways, it's customer centricity, it's marketing, right? There's no marketing whatsoever being done by Philips on this. This is an insanely marketed, insanely tested, insanely customer-centric solution, and you can see it is also following, the 0 to 1 rules of, when you're gonna take over the market, you gotta be an order of magnitude cheaper. $249. We're not quite at an order of magnitude, but then Costco is cheap. Many hearing aids actually cost between $2,000 and $3,000. And so the question is, now that Apple, introduces this, and this as an audiologist in your iPhone and a clinical grade hearing aid, in your iPhone, what do you think happens to that field of audiology, right? What do you think happens to the insurance in that field? And it's entirely going to be disrupted, in my view. Do you need audiologists with a salary of $110K? Do you really need that when you have it in your iPhone? And so, of course, the industry deleting strategy that, say, the Apple, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazon of the world have, it's continuing, right? And I think another industry that's about to be deleted is going to be the glasses industry. And this has already started, right? There's already websites where if you know your vision, you can put your vision and you can get a pair of glasses for like $25. That has already started, but I think this is going to be tech's desire. I think tech's going to want to just take over that business because if you look, this is the Ray-Ban Meta. It's very impressive. If you look at, and this is a demo they released like a month ago, it's getting very, very impressive. And I think the optometrist, the vision industry is also, maybe not right now, maybe we gotta wait a few years, but they're also going to be replaced by big tech, because this is quite impressive. If you need glasses, I don't know if you need glasses, but if you need glasses, I actually went to the Apple store and I tried the Apple Vision Pro, and I still don't understand how the tech guy was able to adjust the thing to my vision in just a few seconds, right? I'm still trying to figure out how he did that, because these things are going to adjust to your glasses and they're going to correct your vision in real time. It seems very obvious to me, and while the disruption is this, and then the optometrist charges you $100 and you have to drive there and they have to test your eye and blast hair on your eye. There's no better way to do it, seriously. And they do things that I think tech is going to do much better. And of course, this today is being laughed at, and we laugh at it. But remember that the smart glasses valley of despair started in 2013 with the Google's failure of the Google glasses. And so we're about to exit that valley of despair. I think these are about to go mainstream. And once they go mainstream, this is the work in progress of Apple. Once they go mainstream, that means that either Facebook or Apple will entirely delete the glasses industry. That is what I believe. And just so you know, if you see the glasses industry, well, according to Grok in 2023, 2024, it's $80 billion. So adjust it to today, and let's talk about when that happens. When that happens, that's a $100 billion industry that's going to be disrupted just in the US, if my vision is correct, that glasses are just going to be fully smart glasses, and there's not going to be such a thing as eyewear anymore. Entire healthcare verticals will entirely disappear. And that's how Apple, that's how Meta, that's how Amazon need to grow. How do they grow? How do they add a few hundred billions globally to their core business? Well, they do that by disrupting bigger and bigger markets, right? I still remember the days where people used cameras and they thought cameras were better, right? And today we shoot movies and shows on iPhones, and they do a much better job. Anyways, more health innovations are coming. things that people are really not noticing, right? Not commenting on it, right? I see a future very plausible where we're going to have X-ray vision on the phone, and they're already working on miniaturizing that. It's pretty darn small already, but it may get even smaller. And so I have no issue imagining a future where your phones, maybe the iPhone 25, or maybe not that far, maybe the iPhone 21, will come with an X-ray. Well, think about the disruption that will come to healthcare if you can just X-ray yourself with your phone. To give you an example of how good these tools are getting, right? This is the Samsung S25. I think it's a little over $1,000 for that phone, and you can zoom on the moon and you can see the moon. And so you have a choice between a very, very expensive telescope. We're talking thousands of dollars to try to get this. Or the choice between a phone, which is today $1,000, but that phone, make no mistake, will be $100 in 2 years. And so the disruption takes all sorts of forms. Cameras are getting better. You can scan your skin. You know what's going to happen to a field of dermatology, for example, if you can just take a picture of your skin and ask the phone to analyze what's going on. This is another thing. It's Bluetooth connected. You just connect it, and it's a echo. What is it? An ECG or whatever they're called. What usually is used on pregnant women? Gosh, I don't know why I forgot that. EKG, is it EKG? Anyways, this is echographies, right? So that's what they do, and you can look inside the body, and it just pairs with your phone. And of course, this is the US expensive version. I think that version is $1,500, but you can buy a Chinese version for cheap. Of course, this is old news. We have robotic surgery robots. We have the Apple Watch, the things that it does, the things that it's able to replace is, suck on to none. And every time I ask myself whether I want to move to the Apple ecosystem, which I'm not on because I'm cheap, but if I wanted to move to Apple ecosystem, that would be the Apple Watch. And so, they know the Apple Watch is a big way that people enter the Apple ecosystem because they want to have that product. The disruption even continues. This is a stock that I want to cover on the channel. Talking about, once again, entire healthcare verticals will entirely be disrupted. Think about the MRI machines, right? Made by GE, made by, very old companies that charge an arm and a leg. MRI machines, in my view, are getting disrupted. There's an enormous disruption happening at the hospital. And so this is a company called Hyperfine. It's the first FDA-approved micro MRI machine. And right now they sold it for a few $100,000 each right now, but eventually the cost will come down, right? As volume ramps, costs go down. That's how it works, and they think that over the long run, this machine could cost $50,000, which is about 20 times than the traditional system. That's actually if you get a cheap version or a refurbished version of an MRI machine. Brand new MRI machines, I've seen many of them go for about $2 to $3 million for a nice brand new conventional MRI machine. So you're moving to from $2 to $3 million to potentially $50,000 by having these micro MRI machines. And this is kind of an added bonus, which most people don't think about, is they use about 35 times less power. This uses about 35 times less power, and you may say, well, who cares, Well, we care because a traditional MRI machine, to the best of my understanding, when you got to do like a brain scan, you're going to make multiple shots, right? You're going to take multiple pictures, and each picture is about $20 in electricity alone. Think about that. Think about the building requirements. Think about all of the power that needs to be at the hospital for you to power that giant MRI machine. And every picture, every shot is $20 of electricity. This is much cheaper. It doesn't have any of the requirements. And it's a highly innovative company. And of course, because inflation bad, because we have an awful Fed, you have companies like this who are so discounted. This is they SPAC'd at $10 and then they're worth 77 cents. I've briefly looked at this company. It doesn't look like they're gonna go bankrupt, but innovation is being killed. This Fed is really slowing us down tremendously by keeping the rates so crazily high and making investments in innovation not a thing. thing anymore. But think about the disruption that this is going to bring. When insurance companies, when they cover for your MRI, they charge you thousands of dollars for that MRI. Well, that cost is about to collapse. Is it going to be 10 times cheaper, 20 times cheaper? I don't know. But at least an order of magnitude cheaper. And if this scales, this could be many orders of magnitude cheaper, 2 orders of magnitude cheaper. Why not? So this is pretty nuts, the disruption that we're seeing in healthcare. And I know this video is getting long, and I was going to tell you about other things, but I'm not going to go into detail. But there's genetics cure for disease. Right now more ex vivo type of cure, but they're working on in vivo versions of that. So some of these are still expensive. So for example, CRISPR-Cas9, there's Casgevy, right? For $2.3 million, you can cure. I mean, even the doctors don't like to use that word. You can cure sickle cell disease for $2.3 million. Now, the costs are going to go down quickly, no doubt in my mind, especially as they're working for in vivo solution, just injections to get rid of diseases. But a company that I own, I don't own CRISPR-Cas9 just yet, but a company that I own is TGTX, right? TGTX makes Briumvi. Briumvi is, again, quote unquote, a cure for multiple sclerosis. That's a CD20 therapy that's related to that, Briumvi, for example, is not that expensive of a cure. It's $50,000. It's not that expensive of a cure compared to how much money we spend on health. And so anyways, this is going to get even cheaper, and I think traditional health is about to see an insane world of disruption in an industry that is definitely not ready for disruption. And believe me, I know a lot of doctors. I don't think a lot of them see what's coming, right? When I see how much debt doctors take on, when I see how sometimes the confidence, sometimes, the type of house you're going to buy, the confidence, I guarantee you a lot of doctors are right in the line of disruption, right in the line of that $250,000 a year job disappearing overnight. You're right in that line, but you're still gonna get finance and buy the $150,000 G-Wagon or whatever, and not spend wisely. And of course, I know the doctors who follow the channel do not do that. I know the doctors who follow the channel are savvy investors, but you probably know what I mean. It's like traditional health is right in the line of disruption. In my view, disruption is coming. And let me continue with, okay, wait a second, let me pause the video. See, this is the problem when I make these long videos. I deleted a slide that I had on LifeMD and Hims by mistake. That's okay. So briefly, what I was going to tell you about LifeMD and Hims is that the market still ignores their potential disruption, as evidenced by their price to sales, as evidenced by my ratios. The market entirely ignores it. The market gives giant valuation to hospital REITs and over traditional healthcare companies, insurance companies, etc. But it's entirely ignoring the disruption potential that companies like LifeMD and Hims are going to bring to traditional healthcare. Because digital pharmacies, there is no doubt in my mind that digital pharmacies are the way to go. You don't need 45,000 of them. You can just have remote warehouses that ship the products everywhere, and that is very deflationary. Much cheaper than the 45,000 pharmacies that oftentimes charge you an arm and a leg for the medication, and you have to use coupon websites to know how much you're going to pay. Coupon websites like GoodRx, for example. Anyways, that's point number one. Cash pay. And this is going to be a central focus of the remainder of this video. Cash pay, I believe, is one of the major competitive advantages of companies like LifeMD and Hims, because cash pay has many advantages. One of them is price certainty. And we're going to get to that in a second when I talk to you about insurance. But it also has, new business model innovations, like don't pay if you don't qualify, right? If you're trying to get, an ED medication with Hims, and the specialist that you see says, "Oh, sorry, sir, or you have heart problems, you don't qualify for the ED medication, I can't help you," you're not going to be charged. And then, of course, even in the way the molecules are designed, the drugs are designed, they make the customer feel good. They don't make the customer feel ashamed or feel sad that they take a drug, and this increases adherence to the regimen, to the treatment. So that's all customer centricity. This is all, the ideas of Amazon. And then you have the network of doctors, right? Again, using modern technology to be deflationary. Why our network of doctors, and Hims is a two-sided platform for doctors. LifeMD is slightly different because they have a hired staff in New York City, hired doctors in New York City. But nonetheless, for Hims, for example, is a network of doctors, and it makes a lot of sense because you can have remote visits, which means you don't have to wait. You're not limited to the person physically present, right? It takes under 24 hours often to see a doctor, and these doctors work from home. So in the cost of the visit, you don't bundle the cost of the medical office building, etc. And same for remote labs, right? I think Hims with its acquisition of Tribe, I think what they're doing is they're starting a new disruption, but this time it's not for pharmacies. This time it's not for family doctor offices and medical office building. This time it's for lab buildings and lab people. So that's what I think is very outstanding and very much forgotten by the market on this. But let's go back on cash pay. And this is, I think, something absolutely essential. In my view, cash pay everything is going to be an enormous business model innovation in the healthcare space. I think cash pay will be a major tailwind for companies like Hims, LifeMD, and many others. For example, your glasses, your diagnostics with your Apple Watch, right? They're going big tech, which means they're going customer-centric, they're going transparent pricing, and they're going cash pay, right? Big tech is never going to accept your insurance to get the headphones from Apple, right? The AirPods, right? You're not going to be able to cover your AirPods with your insurance. That's not going to happen. Insurance only covers for very expensive stuff. And what will happen is that people will realize, well, wait a minute, my deductible is about the cost of an AirPods. I'm going to get an AirPod instead. And the AirPod, of course, whenever you have a diagnosis, it does it for free. You can have an audiologist every day, and you can track your hearing every day for free. So both disruptive and cheaper because it is cash pay. And cash pay brings huge advantages in the world of cost. In terms of cost, cash pay is cheaper. This is what a lot of people still don't get, is that cash pay is cheaper for the entire industry. There's a lot of fiat amounts. There's an enormous dollar amount that is going to be deleted by the disruption coming for that industry. And this data comes from the CEO of Crowd Health. Podcast Saifedean Ammous. He has a lot of strong opinions, perhaps even more strongly opinionated than me. And so I don't agree with everything that Saifedean Ammous says, but the CEO here makes absolutely excellent points. So one of the points that he makes in that podcast is that 40% of a doctor's practice sells. A traditional doctor that accepts, all sorts of insurance, and you have to call in and ask, "Oh, do you take my insurance?" Or they say, "Oh, yes, we accept." "Oh, no, we don't." 40% of a doctor's practices sell have to be fought for and are uncertain. Namely, if you make a procedure and the patient gives you their insurance information, and say the insurance ends up denying or not covering enough or asking for more paperwork, you're going to lose a lot of that revenue. So essentially 40% of the revenue is uncertain because insurance companies are very, very good at not paying. And oftentimes, and this is less the fault of a patient, I presume, but oftentimes if if the patient's insurance doesn't pay, then the doctor has to send the bill to the patient himself or herself, and oftentimes that ends up to collections because the bill is, to begin with, much more expensive than if it was a cash pay solution, right? Cash pay solutions are cheaper by definition. What the insurance is going to be billed much more, and it's going to be billed much more because they know full well that on $1,000 you have 40% of that, so you have $400 that is uncertain that you're going to have to fight for, right? And on the patient side, and this is the data from Andy Schoonover here, 20% of insurance claims are denied after the procedure is done. They're denied after the procedure is done. And he explained it goes into a very tricky situation where the patient and the practitioner all agree on the procedure. The medical practitioner says the procedure is necessary, and then they argue with another doctor on the phone that's hired by the insurance company, and the other doctor on the phone, their professional opinion is that the procedure is not necessary. But the doctor on the phone never saw the patient, right? But they say, oh no, it's not necessary. And so they have to argue with pharmacists, they have to argue with doctor to try to get the claim reimbursed by insurance. And when they don't, they have to go try to get the claim paid by the customer. And it's very hard oftentimes to get. And another problem, of course, is that we live in an inflationary system, and the only way for an insurance company to make more money is for the rates to go up and for the price of insurance to go up. In a world where the price of insurance declines every year, there is no room for the insurance company to make money. And so this is going to create a huge turmoil in that industry as we enter deflation, and as people start to use alternatives and they start to go cash pay, because if you want to benefit from the deflation and the decrease in costs in healthcare, you have to go cash pay. And lastly, insurees are unaware of the risk they're taking. For example, if you're accepting a $50,000 procedure, right, because you think it's going to be covered, you may not be aware that there's a 1 chance out of 5. It's like the lottery, but in reverse. There's 1 chance out of 5 that, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, you get a phone call and they say, oh, we don't cover. Or you get an email and they say, hey, we don't cover that 50K insurance. You're going to have to pay for it. You thought your insurance was paying for it, but no, it's not covered. You're going to have to pay for it. And the argument that he makes, and they have, it's a crowdfunding health platform, right? It's not insurance, and that's the point. That's the very point. The point that he makes in that video is that most oftentimes nowadays already for expensive procedures too, you're just better off paying in cash. And this is an example. And by the way, I went on a deep dive on my own on this, looking in my own area for, clinics, hospitals that are cash pay. So this is an example of one surgery center of Oklahoma. They're fully cash pay. They're very well rated. All of the US credentials, all of the US accreditation, US based doctor, US everything, top of the line care. And they give you the exact price. So look, these are very common surgeries, by the way. So appendectomy, right? Appendicitis removal used to be popular back in the day. 7,368, right? Fistulotomy, right? I put there because I think Louis XIV would have been absolutely amazed to see that nowadays this costs $3,800 for a fistulotomy. And they have a long list. They have hundreds. You can scroll through the list and look at any surgery that you may be interested in. I'm just taking the more common one. Inguinal hernia repair. Right, very common, right? Very common in men in their 50s, 60s, extremely common surgery. Only $5,000. Only $5,000. That is how common that is, the surgery of a hernia. Very, very common. Anyways, and then hip replacement, right? Also very common, maybe in older stages of life, but also extremely common, especially for people who run a lot, etc. Only 17,500. And the reason why I say only is because oftentimes these are 40 to 60,000 oftentimes, and your doctor has to fight with your insurance company for months and months and months to try to get them to cover the hip replacement. And you have to go through that fight, and you still have the risk that they deny the claim, and you have to go back and forth and appeal again. Why would you want to take that risk when if you go cash pay, you can get it for 3 times cheaper? Why would you want to take that risk? And I'll conclude with this because I see the comments coming on this. Oh, you don't understand. It's not easy to say. Some people don't have $17,000 to pay for the hip replacement. Well, the odds are a lot of this stuff is stuff that you're going to need later in life. That's not stuff that you're going to need early in life. It makes so much more sense. And I use $600 because that's the cost of my own health insurance is $600 a month. Like 20 years, $600 a month. The return on the NASDAQ, right? I'm using the NASDAQ's return. I'm not using Beat the Denominator's return. I'm using the NASDAQ return, 18%. Start with $1,000. You put $600 a month for 20 years. right? So assume you do this at 30, and assume from your 30 to age 50, the odds are you're not going to have big health problems. Let's assume that. That's $1.4 million. That's $1.4 million. So you could literally buy the entire catalog of surgery and spend years going on surgeries and getting everything done, and you would still not have spent the $1.4 million. Where is the money going? You know, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Like the system has enabled companies. I don't know what type of form this disruption is going to take, but there's going to be a huge disruption because the delta is so tremendous here. There's going to be huge disruption, and don't get me wrong, this is not an endorsement of Saifedean. I definitely don't agree with everything that Saifedean says. For example, in this interview, right, they go and they criticize GLP-1s. I for one don't think GLP-1s are ridiculous. I think they're part of a major revolution in medicine called peptides. There's all sorts of peptides that we are discovering that have a lot of advantages. It's part of a world of proteins. These are the building block of proteins, and it turns out groundbreaking innovations are coming from a peptides world more than just weight loss. And so it's easy to pick. You know, I also would hate to give up vegetables because, you know, Saifedean is big on like just eating meat and only meat. You know, and you know. Like vegetables are delicious. Like it's like, have you ever had palak paneer or something? Like it makes you addicted to spinach. So I don't agree with giving up vegetables. So that's not an endorsement of the whole thing. But there's one thing that I entirely agree with you with Saifedean here. Is the last point is that, and that's why Bitcoin is also part of this conversation. And anytime we bring up insurance, I think Bitcoin is going to need to be part of the conversation, which is, and this is of course, this is an excuse that I'm giving to the insurance companies, because, you know, when I ask where is the money, why is the money not there, you think? Well, probably because there's a lot of, probably because of some greed, right? They want to make money. Probably because some people abuse the system and use the health insurance too much. But it's also because they're invested in bonds. The premiums are invested in bonds. The premiums are not invested in the Nasdaq. That's the problem, right? And so if you take an insurance company of any kind, home insurance, car insurance, health insurance, and you stop, and because they can't buy the Nasdaq because of regulation, right? But you stop having them invest in bonds, and you start having them invest in Bitcoin, right? All of a sudden, an insurance company, when you sprinkle some Bitcoin in it, all of a sudden, I would argue you would find that it may work much better because that money is not gone because you invested in bonds instead of investing in Bitcoin. So that's part of the Bitcoin thing, you know. And of course they could invest in the Nasdaq, but they can't, right? An operating company can't own the Nasdaq, or they can't own other stocks, but they can own Bitcoin. And so that's why injecting Bitcoin into insurance companies also fixes insurance companies, and it helps them with the future that is to come, which is a future of deflation. And in a future of deflation, that means you're going to have declining revenue. And so insurance companies, in my view, need to adopt a Bitcoin strategy sooner than later. That is part of this conversation. So anyways, I hope you liked this video. I know it was fairly ambitious of a video, and I didn't know it was going to take this direction. But hopefully you like this video and you like my thoughts on this. Thank you so much for watching. This took a lot of time. This was not investment advice, not financial advice. This is just entertainment. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.